My name is Rufus Reynolds, and at 67 years old, I never thought I would be homeless after losing my only son. Ethan was my world, my legacy, my best friend. When cancer took him, I thought at least I would have his memory alive through my granddaughter and daughter-in-law. How wrong I was. Less than 6 months after burying my boy, Amanda threw me out with nothing but a suitcase and these chilling words: "You're not welcome here anymore. Go die in a dumpster." But what she didn't know about my son's will would change everything. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Also, if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how justice finally found its way to my doorstep. Life wasn't always this complicated. There was a time when our family was the picture of happiness. My wife Margaret and I built a beautiful life together. She was the love of my life, a brilliant woman with a smile that could light up any room. We were young and ambitious when we married, both fresh out of college with big dreams. Margaret was a talented architect, and I was just starting my journey in the tech industry. We worked hard, saved our money, and eventually welcomed our only son, Ethan, into the world. Those were the happiest days of my life. Margaret was an incredible mother, nurturing and patient. But fate can be cruel. When Ethan was just 8 years old, Margaret was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. Despite the best treatments available, we lost her within a year. Her death devastated both of us, leaving me a single father to a grieving boy. After Margaret's passing, it was just Ethan and me against the world. I poured all my energy into two things: raising my son and building my tech company, Reynolds Innovations. The company started in our garage, focusing on developing software for medical equipment. Those early years were tough, working 16-hour days while making sure Ethan had everything he needed. I would code late into the night after putting him to bed, determined to create a legacy that would secure his future. By the time Ethan was in high school, Reynolds Innovations had grown into a respected name in the industry. We'd expanded from medical software to comprehensive healthcare technology solutions, employing over 200 people. I was proud of what I'd built, but even prouder of the young man my son was becoming. Ethan inherited his mother's intelligence and my determination. He was kind, thoughtful, and showed a natural aptitude for business and technology. After graduating from MIT with honors, Ethan joined the company. He brought fresh ideas and innovative thinking that propelled us to new heights. Within 5 years of his arrival, we doubled our market share and expanded internationally. Watching him flourish in the business world filled me with immense pride. He wasn't just following in my footsteps, he was carving his own path. It was at a healthcare technology conference in San Francisco that Ethan met Amanda. She was working as an event coordinator, and according to Ethan, they connected instantly. When he first brought her home to meet me, I was impressed. Amanda was beautiful, articulate, and seemed genuinely interested in our family. She asked questions about Margaret, listened attentively to our stories, and appeared to share Ethan's values and ambitions. "Dad, she's the one," Ethan told me after dating her for 6 months. "I've never felt this way about anyone before." Their relationship progressed quickly. Amanda was always present at family gatherings, charming our relatives and friends with her wit and warmth. She seemed to fit perfectly into our lives, and I was happy that Ethan had found someone who made him smile the way Margaret had made me smile years ago. For their wedding gift, I gave them the family home. It was a spacious 5-bedroom house in an upscale neighborhood where Ethan had grown up and where I had countless memories with Margaret. I moved into a comfortable condo nearby, wanting to give them space to build their own life while remaining close enough to be a part of it. "This house has been filled with love for decades," I told them on their wedding day. "Now it's your turn to fill it with new memories." The wedding was an extravagant affair, largely orchestrated by Amanda. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. She insisted on the most expensive venue in the city, designer dresses, exotic flowers flown in from South America, and a guest list of over 300 people. Ethan was happy to give her whatever she wanted, and I was pleased to see him so in love. But during the wedding planning, I caught glimpses of a different side to Amanda. Impatient with vendors, obsessed with how things would appear on social media, and particularly interested in the financial aspects of our family business. "Your father must be worth millions," I overheard her saying to Ethan one evening. "The company must be valued at what, 50 million? 60? Ethan laughed it off. "Dad built something amazing. But we're not in this for the money, remember? We want to make a difference." She quickly agreed, but I noticed her eyes didn't match her smile. After they settled into married life, Ethan continued to excel at Reynolds Innovations. He gradually took over more of the day-to-day operations as I began stepping back. By this point, the company had grown to a valuation of just over $70 million. We were approached by several larger corporations looking to acquire us, but Ethan and I agreed that the company would remain family-owned. We had too much pride in what we'd built to sell it off. 2 years into their marriage, Amanda gave birth to my granddaughter, Sophie. Becoming a grandfather was one of the greatest joys of my life. Sophie was perfect, with Ethan's curious eyes and intelligent gaze. I spent as much time as I could with her, babysitting whenever Ethan and Amanda wanted a night out, bringing gifts perhaps too frequently, and simply marveling at how life continues through generations. It was around Sophie's first birthday that I began noticing changes in Amanda's behavior toward me. Our once warm conversations became short and perfunctory. She would make excuses when I asked to visit, claiming Sophie was napping or not feeling well. When I did visit, Amanda would often be on her phone or suddenly remember errands she needed to run, leaving Ethan and me with Sophie. "Is everything okay with Amanda?" I asked Ethan during one of our weekly lunches. "She seems distant lately." "She's just stressed," Ethan explained. "Running the household, taking care of Sophie, it's a lot of work, and you know how she likes everything to be perfect." I nodded, accepting his explanation. But in my heart, I sensed something was shifting in our family dynamic. Little did I know how drastically things would change in the coming months. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was at home, enjoying my coffee and reading the newspaper when my phone rang. It was Ethan, and from the moment I heard his voice, I knew something was terribly wrong. "Dad, I need you to come to the hospital," he said, his voice strained. "I've been having these headaches for weeks, and I finally got checked out. The doctors found something." I rushed to the hospital, my heart pounding with fear. Ethan was sitting in a consultation room, looking pale but composed. The diagnosis was devastating: glioblastoma, an aggressive brain tumor. The doctor explained that while they could attempt treatment, the prognosis wasn't good. Ethan had possibly a year, maybe 18 months, with aggressive intervention. My world collapsed in that sterile hospital room. My son, my only child, the living legacy of my beloved Margaret, was dying. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But Ethan, showing a strength I had always admired, reached out and squeezed my hand. "We'll fight this, Dad," he said. "Together, like we always have." The next few weeks were a blur of specialist appointments, second opinions, and treatment plans. We flew to specialists across the country, seeking any hope, any experimental treatment that might save him. Money was no object. I would have spent every penny I had to save my son. During this time, Amanda's reaction troubled me deeply. Of course, she was present at appointments and outwardly supportive, but there was a detachment in her eyes, as if she were already planning for a future without Ethan. While I was researching treatment options late into the night, Amanda was often on her phone, scrolling through social media or texting with friends. One evening, while Ethan was resting after a particularly difficult round of treatment, I overheard Amanda on the phone in the kitchen. "It's not looking good," she said in a hushed voice. "The doctors are saying maybe 6 months now. But don't worry, we've talked about the will. I'll be taken care of." I stood frozen in the hallway, unable to believe what I was hearing. Was she already counting the money while my son fought for his life? I wanted to confront her, but Ethan needed positivity and support, not family conflict. So I swallowed my anger and focused on being there for him. As the treatments progressed, their toll on Ethan became increasingly evident. He lost weight, his energy depleted, and the vibrant man he once was faded before my eyes. Yet through it all, his concern was for others. He worried about Sophie's future, about the company, and about how Amanda and I would cope after he was gone. "Dad," he said to me one afternoon when we were alone in his hospital room, "I need to talk to you about what happens after." "Don't talk like that," I pleaded. "We're still fighting." "We are," he agreed, "but I need to be practical. I've been watching Amanda since the diagnosis. She's changed, or maybe this situation has just revealed who she really is." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to protect him from my observations and suspicions, but another part recognized that Ethan was perceptive and had likely noticed the same things I had. "I've been thinking about the will," he continued. "I originally had everything going to Amanda, with trust set up for Sophie's education and future. But now, I'm not sure if Amanda will manage the money responsibly." "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I'm meeting with Thomas tomorrow," he said, referring to our family lawyer and my old friend. "I want to make some changes, put in some safeguards. And Dad, I want you to promise me something. Promise you'll look after Sophie. Make sure she grows up knowing about her grandmother, about our family values." "Of course," I said, my voice breaking. "You know I will." Ethan's condition deteriorated rapidly after that. The tumor was growing despite the treatments, causing increased pressure on his brain. He began having seizures and periods of confusion. During one of his more lucid moments, he asked for Thomas to visit him in the hospital. They spent over an hour together behind closed doors. When Thomas emerged, his expression was solemn but determined. "He's made some changes to his will," Thomas told me privately. "Important ones. He asked me not to discuss the details with anyone until it's necessary." I nodded, respecting my son's privacy and decisions. Whatever changes he'd made, I trusted they reflected his wishes for his family's future. In his final weeks, Ethan's decline was rapid and heartbreaking. Amanda spent less and less time at the hospital, citing the need to care for Sophie. It was mostly me sitting by his bedside, holding his hand, reminiscing about happier times, and assuring him that his daughter would be loved and protected. On a quiet Sunday morning in October, with the autumn sun casting a golden glow through the hospital window, Ethan took his last breath. I was holding his hand, telling him about how proud his mother would be of the man he'd become. I like to think he heard me before he slipped away. The funeral was a grand affair, much like the wedding had been. Amanda spared no expense, and I wondered briefly if the extravagance was more for appearance than out of grief. She played the part of the devastated widow perfectly, sobbing dramatically as the casket was lowered into the ground. I stood quietly beside her, my grief too profound for such public displays. My focus was on little Sophie, just 3 years old, too young to understand that her father was never coming home again. After the funeral, friends and family gathered at Ethan and Amanda's home. I overheard snippets of conversation about the future of Reynolds Innovations, about the substantial inheritance Amanda would receive, about how fortunate she was to be so well provided for. Throughout it all, I remained in a fog of grief, unable to think about practical matters when my heart was shattered into a million pieces. As the days turned into weeks following Ethan's death, I did my best to be present for Sophie and to support Amanda. I would visit regularly, bringing groceries, helping with household tasks, and most importantly, spending time with my granddaughter. But with each visit, Amanda became increasingly cold and distant. "I think Sophie and I need some space," she told me about a month after the funeral. "It's hard having you here all the time. You remind us too much of Ethan." Her words stung, but I tried to be understanding. Grief affects people differently, I told myself. Perhaps this was her way of coping. Little did I know what was really behind her growing hostility. The official reading of Ethan's will took place 6 weeks after his funeral. Thomas, our family lawyer, gathered us in his office downtown. Present were Amanda, myself, and 2 executives from Reynolds Innovations who had specific bequests in the will. Thomas cleared his throat and began reading the document. As expected, Amanda inherited the family home, and a substantial portion of Ethan's assets. The specific amount shocked even me: $55 million, representing the bulk of his personal wealth and his share of the company. There were trusts established for Sophie's education and future, as I had expected. What surprised me was a clause stating I would have a lifetime right to reside in the family home, a stipulation Ethan had apparently added in his final revision. As Thomas read this section, I glanced at Amanda. Her expression flickered momentarily with something that looked like annoyance before she composed herself. When the reading concluded, she approached me with a tight smile. "Rufus, of course you're welcome to stay with us as long as you like," she said, her voice lacking any genuine warmth. Ethan would have wanted us to remain close. I thanked her, relieved that I would be able to maintain a regular presence in Sophie's life. Ethan's foresight in adding that clause to his will touched me deeply. He had understood how important it was for me to be near my granddaughter. But within days of the will reading, Amanda's behavior changed dramatically. With $55 million now securely in her possession, she seemed to shed the facade she had maintained throughout her marriage to my son. First came the small slights. She would forget to tell me about dinner times, leaving me to discover the family had eaten without me. She stopped including me in decisions about Sophie, enrolling her in a prestigious preschool across town without consulting me. When I would try to engage in conversation, Amanda would respond with one-word answers before finding a reason to leave the room. Then she began redecorating the house, removing family photos that included me or Margaret. When I asked about a particular picture of Ethan as a child with both his parents, Amanda shrugged. "I'm going for a more modern aesthetic," she said dismissively. "Those old photos don't match the new decor." The situation worsened when, 3 months after Ethan's death, Amanda introduced me to Jackson Williams. Tall, tanned, and at least 15 years younger than her, he had the polished look of someone who spent more time on his appearance than on substantive pursuits. "Jackson and I met at grief counseling," Amanda explained, though neither of them showed any signs of grief as they giggled together like teenagers. "He's been such a comfort to me during this difficult time." I later discovered there had been no grief counseling. Jackson was a personal trainer at Amanda's gym, and according to a mutual friend, they had been seeing each other even before Ethan's diagnosis. This revelation sickened me, but for Sophie's sake, I kept my feelings to myself. To my horror, Amanda and Jackson were married in a private ceremony in Las Vegas just 5 months after Ethan's death. She didn't even have the decency to tell me beforehand. I learned about it when they returned. Jackson now installed in my son's home, sleeping in my son's bed, and spending my son's money. Jackson made no effort to hide his contempt for me. He would talk over me at the dinner table, mock my outdated business ideas, and openly discuss with Amanda how they planned to spend their fortune. They bought luxury cars, designer clothes, and began planning extensive renovations to the house. "We're thinking of converting the guest room into a home gym," Jackson announced one evening. "You know, the room you're using." "But that's where I stay when I visit Sophie," I protested. "Well, maybe it's time you visited less," he replied, sharing a smirk with Amanda. "Sophie needs to bond with her new daddy." The thought of this man replacing Ethan in Sophie's life was unbearable. What was even more painful was how Amanda began systematically cutting me off from my granddaughter. She enrolled Sophie in so many activities that there was always an excuse why I couldn't see her. Dance classes, swimming lessons, playdates with children of Amanda's new wealthy friends. When I did get time with Sophie, it was brief and supervised. "Grandpa, why don't you come see me anymore?" Sophie asked during one of these rare visits. "Mommy said you're too busy and don't want to play with me." Her words broke my heart. "That's not true, sweetheart. I want to see you all the time. I miss you so much." Later, when I confronted Amanda about lying to Sophie, she coldly responded, "It's easier than explaining that you're not a priority in our new life." I began to notice other troubling developments. Through connections at Reynolds Innovations, I learned that Amanda had been pressuring the board to sell the company to a larger corporation against Ethan's express wishes that it remain family-owned. She and Jackson were spending money at an alarming rate, buying a vacation home in Aspen, a yacht, and taking extravagant trips to Europe and Asia. One evening, as I sat alone in my converted guest room that was shrinking with each passing day as they filled it with storage items, I overheard Amanda and Jackson talking in the kitchen. "How much longer do we have to put up with the old man?" Jackson asked. "Not much longer," Amanda replied. "I've consulted with a lawyer. Ethan's clause about his father having the right to live here isn't as binding as he thought. We can challenge it on several grounds. Besides, we need that room for the home gym you want." "Good," Jackson said. "He's a constant downer, and he keeps looking at me like I'm not good enough for you or something." "Well, to be fair, you're not," Amanda laughed. "But you're fun, and that's what I need right now. Once we sell the company, we'll have even more money to play with. Then maybe we'll just buy another house and not even have to deal with evicting him." Their casual cruelty and the way they spoke about Ethan's legacy cut me deeply. I sat frozen, listening as they plotted to remove me from my son's home and dismantle the company he had worked so hard to build. In that moment, I realized the full extent of Amanda's betrayal. She had never loved Ethan. He had simply been a path to wealth and status. And now that she had what she wanted, those of us who reminded her of how she got it were inconveniences to be discarded. I considered confronting them immediately, but decided against it. I needed time to think, to plan my next steps carefully. For Sophie's sake, and for Ethan's memory, I couldn't let Amanda destroy everything my son had built and valued. The next day, I called Thomas and asked for an urgent meeting. If there was anyone who could help me protect Ethan's legacy and my relationship with Sophie, it was the man who had helped create the legal framework for our family's affairs for decades. Little did I know that the confrontation I had been avoiding would come to me before I could prepare for it. I will never forget that morning. It was a Saturday, 6 months after Ethan's death. I had been up early, making coffee in the kitchen and planning to spend some time in the garden. Ethan and I had planted that garden together when he was a boy, and tending to it gave me some small comfort, a connection to happier times. Amanda stormed into the kitchen, already dressed in designer workout clothes, her face set in a cold, determined expression. Jackson lurked in the doorway behind her, arms crossed, a smug smile playing on his lips. "We need to talk," Amanda announced, not bothering with any pretense of politeness. I set down my coffee mug. "Good morning to you too, Amanda. What's on your mind?" "This isn't working," she said bluntly. "Your presence in this house. It's time for you to leave." Though I had overheard their conversation about evicting me, the directness of her attack still caught me off guard. "This was my home long before it was yours," I reminded her. "Ethan specifically included in his will that I have the right to live here." Amanda's laugh was cold. "I've consulted with a new lawyer. That clause doesn't hold up. This house is mine now, and I get to decide who lives in it. I'm Sophie's grandfather. She needs me in her life. Sophie has a new father figure now." She gestured toward Jackson. "We're a family unit, and frankly, having you around is depressing. You're constantly moping, bringing up Ethan, showing Sophie old pictures. It's not healthy." "Not healthy?" I could feel anger rising in my chest. "What's not healthy is erasing her father from her memory, or lying to her about why I'm not around more often." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "I'm not discussing this. You have until tomorrow to pack your things and get out. We're going to be renovating, and your room is the first to go." I stood my ground. "I'm not leaving. Ethan wanted me here with Sophie. I promised him I'd look after her." That's when Amanda's facade completely crumbled. Her face contorted with rage, and she stepped toward me, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. "You're not welcome here anymore," she hissed. "This is my house now, my money, my life. You've had your time, old man. You're just a reminder of the past I'm trying to forget. So take your sad, pathetic grief and go die in a dumpster for all I care." Her words hit me like physical blows. The venom in her voice, the naked contempt in her eyes. I finally saw the real Amanda, the woman who had deceived my son and was now desecrating his memory. "Sophie will wonder where I've gone," I said quietly, trying to maintain my dignity despite the shock and pain. "We'll tell her you moved to Florida, Jackson chimed in. Kids forget quickly. Give it a month. She won't even remember what you look like. I looked between them, these two people who had conspired to strip me of my family and home. You won't get away with this, I said. Thomas will. Thomas isn't your lawyer anymore. He's ours, Amanda interrupted. And he's been well paid to look after our interests, not yours. Now, I'm being generous giving you until tomorrow. Don't make me call security to remove you tonight. I knew then that further argument was pointless. Amanda had the house, the money, and apparently the legal backing to enforce her wishes. For now, I would have to retreat and regroup. I'll need to say goodbye to Sophie, I insisted. She's at a play date, Amanda replied. And that's for the best. Clean breaks are easier. With a heavy heart, I went to my room and began packing my belongings. I had so few things there. Clothes, books, a few photographs, and mementos of my life with Ethan. As I placed each item in my suitcase, memories washed over me. Teaching Ethan to ride a bike in the driveway outside, reading bedtime stories in this very room when he was sick, helping him with science projects at the desk by the window. This house wasn't just walls and a roof to me. It was a repository of my family's history, a place where my son had grown up and where I had hoped to watch my granddaughter grow up too. The next morning, I loaded my suitcases into my car under the watchful eyes of Jackson, who had appointed himself guardian to ensure I didn't take anything that wasn't strictly mine. I paused at the front door, looking back at the home that held so many memories. Sophie's teddy bear, I said suddenly. The one I gave her for her birthday. She'll be looking for it. It's in my room. We'll get her a new one, Jackson replied dismissively, practically pushing me out the door. As I drove away from the house, I caught a glimpse of Sophie's tiny face in an upstairs window. So Amanda had lied. Sophie wasn't at a play date. She was being kept away from me deliberately. I raised my hand in a small wave and saw her little hand wave back before she was suddenly pulled away from the window. That final image of my granddaughter, confused and separated from me, broke something inside me that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. With nowhere else to go immediately, I checked into a modest hotel a few miles away. Sitting on the edge of the bed in that impersonal room, I felt utterly alone. My son was gone. My granddaughter had been taken from me, and the home that held all my memories had been closed to me. At 67 years old, I found myself essentially homeless, cast aside by a woman who had systematically dismantled everything I held dear. I spent that first night staring at the ceiling, replaying Amanda's cruel words. Go die in a dumpster. How could someone harbor such hatred toward an elderly man whose only crime was loving his son and granddaughter? How could Ethan, who was always such a good judge of character, have been so deceived by her? In the days that followed, I tried repeatedly to contact Sophie. I called the house, but my numbers were blocked. I sent emails that went unanswered. I even drove by Sophie's preschool, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but was told by the staff that they had strict instructions not to allow me to see her. Amanda had apparently told them I was unstable and potentially dangerous, a complete fabrication that nonetheless served her purpose of keeping us apart. The financial reality of my situation soon became apparent as well. While I had my retirement savings and Social Security, the bulk of my wealth had been tied up in Reynolds Innovations, which I had largely transferred to Ethan years earlier as part of my succession planning. I had been generous with both Ethan and Amanda, helping them buy vacation properties, funding lavish trips, and spoiling Sophie with gifts. My condo had been sold when I moved in with them after Ethan fell ill, with the proceeds going to experimental treatments not covered by insurance. I wasn't destitute, but I certainly couldn't maintain my former lifestyle indefinitely. The hotel was expensive, and I needed to find more permanent housing. But more than the financial concerns, it was the emotional toll that weighed on me. The isolation, the loss of purpose, the separation from Sophie. These were the true hardships. 1 week after being forced from my home, I hit my lowest point. Sitting alone in a coffee shop, watching families together, grandparents with their grandchildren, I was overcome with despair. Was this how my life would end? Alone, separated from the only family I had left, the memories of my son fading a little more each day. In that moment of darkness, I remembered something. Thomas, our family lawyer, had been my friend for over 30 years. Even if Amanda claimed he was now working exclusively for her, I couldn't believe he would have completely abandoned our friendship. Despite my doubts, I decided to reach out to him one last time. With renewed determination, I pulled out my phone and called his direct line, the one few clients had access to. To my surprise and relief, he answered on the second ring. "Rufus," he said, his voice warm but cautious. "I've been hoping you would call." "Thomas," I replied, my voice cracking slightly. "I need your help. Amanda has kicked me out of the house. She says the clause in Ethan's will doesn't hold up. She's cut me off from Sophie completely." There was a pause on the line, and then Thomas said something that gave me my first glimmer of hope in days. "Can you come to my office tomorrow morning at 9? There's something about Ethan's will that we need to discuss. Something Amanda doesn't know about yet." As I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Perhaps all was not lost. Perhaps Ethan, knowing his wife better than I had given him credit for, had put some additional safeguards in place. With that hope sustaining me, I made it through another night in my lonely hotel room, waiting for the morning meeting that might change everything. The next morning, I arrived at Thomas's office building 15 minutes early, anxiety and hope battling within me. The prestigious law firm occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, a testament to Thomas's success over his 40-year career. As the elevator carried me upward, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would plead my case if necessary. Thomas's assistant, Marion, greeted me warmly. "Mr. Reynolds, he's expecting you. Go right in." I entered the familiar office, with its wall of law books, the view of the city skyline, and the photos chronicling Thomas's career. Among them was a picture of Thomas, Ethan, and me at a charity golf tournament just 2 years earlier. Ethan was laughing, his arm around my shoulders. The sight of it made my heart clench. Thomas rose from behind his massive desk, coming around to shake my hand firmly. His face, lined with the wisdom of his 70 years, showed genuine concern. "Rufus," he said, gesturing to a comfortable chair. "Sit down, please. Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you," I replied, too anxious to observe social niceties. "Thomas, Amanda says you're her lawyer now, that you're helping her evict me from the house." Thomas's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "That's absolutely false. I'm still the executor of Ethan's estate and the family's lawyer. Amanda has consulted with another attorney, a young shark named Prescott, but I have not and would not help her evict you. That's directly contrary to Ethan's wishes." Relief flooded through me. At least I still had one ally in this fight. "Now," Thomas continued, sitting across from me, "tell me exactly what happened." I recounted everything. Amanda's gradual change after Ethan's death, her quick remarriage to Jackson, their extravagant spending, and finally, the cruel eviction from my home and separation from Sophie. As I spoke, Thomas's expression grew increasingly troubled. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Rufus, did you listen carefully to the will when I read it?" "Of course," I replied, confused by the question. "Amanda got the house and $55 million. Sophie has trusts for her education and future, and I have the right to live in the house for the rest of my life, which Amanda is now challenging." Thomas's face broke into an unexpected smile. "Yes, that's what was read. But did you notice that I paused slightly before reading that section? Did you see me turn to a separate document?" I thought back to the will reading. I was distracted, grief-stricken. I might not have noticed everything. Thomas nodded understandingly. "Ethan came to see me in the hospital, as you know. He was very concerned about Amanda's behavior during his illness. He suspected that once she had control of his assets, she might not honor his wishes regarding you and Sophie. He pulled a file from his desk drawer. So Ethan added a codicil to his will, a separate, sealed document that was only to be opened if certain conditions were met. One of those conditions was if Amanda attempted to remove you from the family home. My heart began to race. What does this codicil say? Thomas opened the file and began to read. I, Ethan James Reynolds, being of sound mind, hereby declare that the bequest to my wife, Amanda Catherine Reynolds, of our family home, and the sum of $55 million is contingent upon her honoring the following conditions. 1. That she provide a permanent home for my father, Rufus Reynolds, for as long as he wishes to reside there. 2. That she ensure my daughter Sophie maintains a close and loving relationship with her grandfather. 3. That she preserve the family nature of Reynolds Innovations rather than selling it to outside interests. Thomas looked up at me. It goes on to state that if any of these conditions are violated, the entire bequest is revoked. The house and $50 million would pass to you, Rufus, with $5 million retained in Sophie's trust fund. I sat back, stunned. Ethan had anticipated Amanda's betrayal and taken steps to prevent it. My son, even in his final days, had been thinking of protecting me and Sophie. She doesn't know about this? I asked. No, Thomas replied, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. This codicil was sealed, as per Ethan's instructions. I was only to reveal it if Amanda failed to honor his wishes. And now? Now, Thomas said, closing the file, we have legal grounds to challenge her actions. Not only can we prevent your eviction, but we can potentially have all assets transferred to you if she has indeed violated the conditions of the will. I sat in silence for a moment, processing this incredible turn of events. Amanda said you were working for her now, that you had been well paid to look after her interests. Thomas's face darkened. That's not just a lie, it's an insult to my professional integrity and to my friendship with your family. Ethan was like a nephew to me. I would never betray his final wishes. What do we do next? I asked, hope beginning to replace the despair that had consumed me for days. First, I'll prepare the legal documents to initiate proceedings, Thomas explained. Then, I think it's time we had a meeting with Amanda and her new lawyer. I'd like to see her face when I reveal the codicil. As I left Thomas's office that day, I felt like a different man than the one who had entered. The burden of hopelessness had lifted, replaced by a sense of purpose and determination. Ethan had provided me with the means to fight back, to protect his legacy and his daughter's future. I wouldn't let him down. Thomas worked quickly. Within 48 hours, he had prepared all the necessary legal documents and scheduled a meeting with Amanda and her lawyer for the following week. In the meantime, I extended my stay at the hotel, now with the confidence that my housing situation would soon be resolved one way or another. During those days of waiting, I thought a lot about what I wanted the outcome to be. Did I want to take everything from Amanda, as she had tried to take everything from me? The vengeful part of me said yes, but the wiser, more compassionate part knew that such an action would impact Sophie too. My priority had to be ensuring Sophie's well-being and maintaining my relationship with her. Everything else was secondary. I also reached out to my old contacts at Reynolds Innovations, discovering that Amanda had indeed been pushing for a sale of the company against Ethan's express wishes. The board members were uncomfortable with her aggressive approach, especially given how little she knew about the business. This information would be vital in demonstrating that she had violated the third condition of Ethan's codicil. The day before our scheduled meeting, Thomas called me with an update. I sent a formal legal notice to Amanda's lawyer this morning, informing him of the existence of the codicil and our intention to enforce it, he said. I just received a panicked call from him. Apparently, Amanda and Jackson have already spent a significant portion of the inheritance. They've purchased property in the Hamptons, ordered a custom yacht, and invested in some questionable business ventures at Jackson's urging. How much have they spent? I asked. Approximately $15 million so far, with commitments for another $10 million in the coming months. If the codicil is enforced and the assets transferred to you, they'll be in serious financial trouble. I pondered this information. Amanda's reckless spending was further evidence of her disregard for Ethan's legacy. She had wasted no time in squandering the fortune my son had worked so hard to build. One more thing, Thomas added. The lawyer mentioned that Jackson comes with his own financial problems. He apparently has significant debt and a history of failed business ventures. It seems he saw Amanda as his meal ticket. This didn't surprise me. I had sensed from the beginning that Jackson was more interested in Ethan's money than in Amanda herself. They deserved each other, but Sophie deserved better than both of them. As I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of emotions: satisfaction that justice might soon be served, sadness that Ethan had chosen so poorly in his wife, and determination to make things right for Sophie's sake. Tomorrow's meeting would be a turning point. I hoped that Amanda would finally understand the consequences of her actions, and that we could find a resolution that would prioritize Sophie's well-being. What I didn't expect was just how dramatically things would unfold when Amanda finally learned the truth about Ethan's will and the precarious position she had placed herself in through her own cruelty and greed. The conference room at Thomas's law firm was impressive, with its long mahogany table, leather chairs, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. I arrived early, my stomach in knots despite the confidence I felt in our legal position. Thomas was already there, arranging documents with methodical precision. "Ready?" he asked as I took a seat beside him. "As I'll ever be," I replied. At precisely 10 o'clock, the door opened. Amanda entered first, dressed expensively in a designer suit, her hair and makeup impeccable. The confident smile on her face suggested she had no idea what was coming. Behind her was Jackson, looking uncomfortable in a suit that seemed slightly too tight, and finally, a sharp-faced young man I presumed to be her lawyer, Arnold Prescott. "Mr. Sullivan," Amanda acknowledged Thomas coolly before turning a contemptuous glance my way. "Rufus, I'm surprised you had the nerve to call this meeting after trespassing at Sophie's preschool." "I wasn't trespassing," I replied calmly. "I was attempting to see my granddaughter after you illegally barred me from the home I have a right to live in." Prescott cleared his throat. "Let's get to the point. My client has made her position clear. The clause regarding Mr. Reynolds's residence is ambiguous at best and unenforceable at worst. We're prepared to offer a small settlement to avoid protracted litigation." Thomas smiled, the kind of smile that had intimidated opposing counsel for 4 decades. "Before we discuss settlements, there's something you should know." He slid a document across the table. "This is a codicil to Ethan Reynolds's will, properly executed and witnessed during his final weeks. I suggest you read it carefully." Prescott picked up the document, his brow furrowing as he read. Amanda, impatient, snatched it from his hands. As her eyes scanned the page, her face drained of color. "This can't be legal," she whispered, looking up with shock. "This can't be real." "I assure you, it is both legal and real," Thomas replied. "Ethan was concerned about how you might behave once you had control of his assets. It seems his concerns were well-founded." Jackson, who had been scrolling through his phone, suddenly looked up. "What's going on? What does it say?" Amanda didn't answer him. Instead, she turned to Prescott. "Can they do this? Can they take everything?" Prescott was still reading, his expression growing increasingly grave. "This appears to be properly executed. If Mr. Reynolds can prove that you violated these conditions, which, given what you've told me about evicting him and preventing contact with Sophie, seems likely." He trailed off, unwilling to state the obvious conclusion. "Tell me," Jackson demanded, grabbing the document. As he read, his face contorted with anger. $55 million? Gone? Because you kicked out your father-in-law? Are you kidding me?" Amanda ignored him, her mind clearly racing for a solution. "We can fight this," she said to Prescott. "Ethan wasn't in his right mind. He was on medications, in pain. We can argue undue influence." "Thomas was there," I reminded her. "He can testify to Ethan's mental state. So can the doctors and nurses who witnessed the document. Not to mention," Thomas added, "that we have evidence you've already violated all 3 conditions. You evicted Rufus, you've prevented him from seeing Sophie, and you've been actively trying to sell Reynolds Innovations against Ethan's wishes." Jackson turned on Amanda, his face red with fury. You stupid, stupid woman. You had it all. All you had to do was let the old man live in a spare room and visit his granddaughter. Don't talk to me like that, Amanda snapped back. This is fixable. We'll let him move back in right away. No harm done. I'm afraid it's not that simple, Thomas interjected. The codicil is clear. Once the conditions are violated, the bequest is revoked. It's not a matter of correcting the violation after the fact. Amanda stared at him, then at me, her composure crumbling by the second. Please, she said, her voice suddenly small. Please, Rufus. We can work something out. I was upset, grieving. I wasn't thinking clearly. You can move back in today. We'll set everything right. I looked at this woman who had told me to go die in a dumpster just days ago, who had systematically cut me off from my granddaughter, who had desecrated my son's memory with her greed and callousness. Part of me wanted to savor this moment, to watch her suffer as she had made me suffer. But then I thought of Sophie, innocent in all of this. What would best serve her interests? Before I could respond, Jackson made his position clear. He stood up abruptly, glaring at Amanda. I didn't sign up for this. I'm not going from living in a mansion to some crappy apartment because you couldn't tolerate your father-in-law. This is your mess, not mine. Jackson, wait, Amanda pleaded. We can fix this together. There's nothing to fix, he replied coldly. It's over. Call me when you figure out how to get the money back. With that, he stormed out of the room, leaving a stunned silence behind him. Amanda stared after him, then turned back to me, tears now streaming down her face, smudging her perfect makeup. He's leaving me? Just like that? After everything I've done for him? In that moment, I saw not the cruel, calculating woman who had thrown me out of my home, but a desperate, frightened person who had just lost her security blanket. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of pity. Thomas, I said quietly, could you give us a moment alone? Thomas nodded, gathering his papers. We'll be right outside. Mr. Prescott? The young lawyer followed Thomas out, leaving Amanda and me alone in the conference room. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the magnitude of the situation hanging in the air between us. I loved him, you know, she finally said, her voice barely audible. Ethan. In the beginning, I really did love him. I believe you, I replied, though I wasn't entirely sure I did. But something changed. Everything changed when he got sick. I couldn't handle it. The hospitals, the treatments, watching him waste away, I shut down. And then after, with the money. It was like I could finally breathe again. Do what I wanted. Be who I wanted. At the expense of what Ethan wanted, I pointed out. At the expense of Sophie's relationship with her grandfather. She looked down at her hands. I was wrong. I see that now. Do you? Or are you just sorry you got caught? Amanda didn't answer immediately. When she did look up, her eyes were red with tears, but clearer, more honest than I'd seen them in years. Both, probably, she admitted. But I'm sorry for how I treated you, and I'm terrified of what happens now. Not just for me, but for Sophie. If you take everything, what happens to her? It was the first time she had mentioned Sophie's welfare as a priority, and it gave me a small hope that perhaps there was some maternal love there after all. I don't want to punish Sophie for your mistakes, I said. My priority is ensuring she's taken care of and that I'm part of her life. As for the rest, that depends on you. What do you mean? I'm willing to negotiate a settlement, one that provides for Sophie's needs and secures my place in her life, while still leaving you with enough to live comfortably. But there would be conditions and oversight. Hope flickered in her eyes. You would do that? After everything? Not for you, I said firmly. For Sophie, and for Ethan. He chose you as Sophie's mother. Despite everything, I have to respect that. Amanda nodded slowly. What would these conditions be? First, I move back into the house. Second, I have regular, unsupervised time with Sophie. Third, Reynolds Innovations remains intact, managed by a board of trustees until Sophie is old enough to decide if she wants to be involved. Fourth, A significant portion of the money goes into a trust that you can't touch to secure Sophie's future. And fifth, all major financial decisions require approval from a financial guardian appointed by the court. She considered this for a long moment. And if I agree to all of that, then you can remain in the house as well, with a reasonable allowance from the trust. You'll continue to be Sophie's primary caretaker, with my support. And we find a way to coexist, for her sake. It wasn't perfect. The thought of living under the same roof as Amanda again was not appealing, but it would keep Sophie's life stable, and that was what mattered most. Amanda wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. I'll agree to your terms, on one condition of my own, which is, you never tell Sophie about any of this. About what I did, about the will, about how close I came to losing everything. I want her to respect me, to think I'm a good mother. I considered her request. It would mean swallowing my anger, letting go of the vindication I felt at Ethan's posthumous victory. But wasn't that what Ethan would want? For peace to prevail? For Sophie's sake? Agreed, I said finally. But you have to earn that respect, Amanda. Starting now. We called Thomas and Prescott back into the room and outlined our agreement. Thomas would draft the necessary legal documents to create the trusts and establish the financial guardianship. Amanda would sign over control of Reynolds Innovations to the Board of Trustees, and I would move back into the house within the week. As we concluded the meeting, Amanda paused before leaving. Jackson took the Bentley, she said, a hint of the old Amanda's materialism showing through. Could I get a ride home? Despite everything, I found myself smiling slightly at the irony. Yes, I said. I'll drive you home. Our home. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning, a chance to create something new from the ashes of betrayal. For Sophie, and for Ethan's memory, it was worth trying. The months following that pivotal meeting brought profound changes to our lives. I moved back into the family home, this time with clear legal protections and a defined role in Sophie's upbringing. Amanda, humbled by her near loss of everything, made visible efforts to honor our agreement. The most joyful aspect of this new arrangement was reuniting with Sophie. At 4 years old, she was too young to fully understand the complexities of what had transpired, but she knew her grandfather was back in her life to stay. Our first weekend together after my return was spent building a birdhouse in the backyard, a project that would have made Ethan smile. "Grandpa, where did you go?" she asked innocently as we painted the wooden house together. "I had to take a little trip," I replied, keeping my promise to Amanda not to reveal the ugly truth. "But I missed you every single day, and now I'm back for good." "Promise?" she asked, her little face serious. "I promise, sweetheart. Nothing will keep us apart again." True to his word, Jackson never returned. He sent someone to collect his belongings while Amanda was out, leaving only a brief note that confirmed what we already knew. He had been interested solely in her money, not in her. While I felt no sympathy for Amanda's romantic disappointment, I did recognize that she was now a single mother who had experienced a significant wake-up call. The legal arrangements Thomas crafted were comprehensive. Sophie's future was secured through a substantial trust fund that would provide for her education and give her a solid financial foundation as an adult. Amanda received a reasonable monthly allowance that allowed for a comfortable lifestyle without the extravagance she had briefly enjoyed. Reynolds Innovations remained intact, managed by a board that included several longtime executives who had worked alongside Ethan and me. As for the house, we established clear boundaries. Amanda and Sophie had the main living areas and bedrooms upstairs, while I created a comfortable apartment for myself in the finished basement, complete with a separate entrance. This arrangement gave us both privacy, while ensuring I remained an integral part of Sophie's daily life. The most surprising development was Amanda's gradual transformation. Without Jackson's negative influence, and with the reality check of nearly losing everything, she began to show glimpses of the woman Ethan had originally fallen in love with. She enrolled in classes at the local community college, studying early childhood education. She became more engaged with Sophie's activities, less obsessed with material possessions and social status. One evening, about 6 months after our new arrangement began, Amanda knocked on my door. She stood awkwardly in the hallway, holding a photo album I recognized immediately. "I found this in the attic," she said. "It's pictures of Ethan as a boy," I thought. I thought maybe we could show them to Sophie together, tell her stories about her dad. It was a small gesture, but a meaningful one. For the first time since Ethan's diagnosis, Amanda was acknowledging the importance of keeping his memory alive for Sophie. We spent that evening looking through old photographs, laughing at Ethan's childhood antics, and sharing stories with Sophie, who soaked up every detail about the father she was too young to remember clearly. The healing process was slow, and not without setbacks. There were disagreements about Sophie's education, about holiday plans, about household decisions. But underlying all of it was a shared commitment to Sophie's well-being and to honoring Ethan's memory in the way we lived our lives. For my part, I found purpose again. Beyond my role as Sophie's grandfather, I established a scholarship fund in Ethan's name at his alma mater, providing opportunities for promising students in medical technology, the field that had been his passion. I also became involved with a support group for elderly individuals who had lost adult children, finding that sharing my experience helped others navigate their grief, while also helping me process my own. Using a portion of the assets that would have reverted to me under the codicil, but which remained in trust under our agreement, I created a foundation focused on helping seniors maintain connections with their grandchildren during family conflicts. The irony wasn't lost on me that Amanda's actions had inadvertently led to helping others avoid similar pain. Sophie flourished in this new environment. With both her mother and grandfather actively involved in her life, she developed into a bright, compassionate child with Ethan's curiosity and love of learning. On her 5th birthday, we planted a tree in the backyard in Ethan's memory, a living reminder of her father that would grow alongside her. "Will it get as big as the sky?" Sophie asked as we patted soil around the sapling. "Eventually," I told her. "And every time you look at it, you can remember that your daddy's love for you is just as big." Amanda, standing nearby, wiped away a tear. In that moment, I saw genuine grief for the husband she had lost, perhaps mingled with regret for the way she had behaved afterward. People are complex, I've learned. Even those who hurt us deeply can have moments of genuine feeling, of growth and change. As I reflect on the journey from that terrible day when Amanda told me to go die in a dumpster to now, I'm struck by the wisdom my son showed in his final act. Ethan understood Amanda better than I did, foreseeing her potential actions and putting safeguards in place. But more importantly, he created a mechanism that ultimately brought about reconciliation rather than further division. Had I simply taken everything from Amanda as the codicil allowed, Sophie would have lost her mother's presence in her daily life. The bitterness and legal battles might have continued for years. Instead, the threat of losing everything brought Amanda to a place where compromise and cooperation became possible. Ethan's plan wasn't just about protecting me and Sophie financially. It was about preserving our family in whatever form it could take after he was gone. The most profound lesson in all of this has been that true wealth isn't measured in millions of dollars or luxury possessions. It's found in the connections we maintain, the love we share, and the legacy we leave behind. Ethan's legacy isn't Reynolds' innovations or the financial assets he accumulated. It's the values he lived by, the people he loved, and the positive impact he had on the world around him. For Sophie, growing up knowing she was deeply loved by her father, even though he's no longer here, is worth more than any inheritance. And for me, the opportunity to share in her life, to tell her stories about her father and grandmother, to watch her grow into her own person, is the most precious gift I could have received. Life rarely gives us perfect resolutions. Amanda and I will never be close friends. The hurt and betrayal run too deep for that. But we've found a way forward, a path that puts Sophie's needs above our own grievances. And in doing so, we honor Ethan's memory more truly than any monument or memorial could. So if you're facing your own family conflicts, your own betrayals and disappointments, I urge you to look beyond the immediate pain to the longer journey. Ask yourself what legacy you want to leave, what relationships truly matter, and how you can preserve them even in difficult circumstances. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in defeating someone who has wronged you, but in finding a way to rebuild something valuable from what remains. Have you ever had to make peace with someone who deeply hurt you for the sake of a greater good? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story touched you, please subscribe to hear more reflections from my journey, and give this video a thumbs up. And remember to share it with someone who might be struggling with family conflict right now. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our challenges makes all the difference. Thank you for listening, and may you find wisdom and healing in whatever family situation you face.